All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our online audience as well. It is a few minutes to 7. We are not beginning yet, but I wanted to come on in and welcome everybody so that this starts popping up on all the socials. And so people start tuning in. If you're joining us online, make sure to share this. Let people know that you're watching. And we'd love to involve you in the night. In fact, everybody, both in the room and at home, you can just open up a tab if you're at home and go to slido.com. If you're here in the audience, the way that we're going to ask you to engage tonight is to go to slido.com on some device. Hopefully you're holding a telephone that doubles as the World Wide Web Explorer. And with that, you can go to slido.com and you can type in this code right here, 332233, and that will bring you to tonight's seminar where you can ask questions. I've seen there's already some questions preloaded, but we'll be back in a few minutes to begin. It is great to see so many people here. It is great to see so many people, and it is just now 7 o'clock. If you're joining us online, I want to say welcome, everybody here in the room. It's great. It's great to see you. That is the 7-second delay that YouTube has. I apologize about that. I will turn that off. I was checking some audio things there. Uh, but hey, I want to say a few words, and then we want to bring up our guest speaker, and I'm going to ask our own apologetics guru himself, Gary, to introduce our speaker in just a minute. But I want to say on behalf of Emmanuel Faith Community Church, I want to say welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight. And I hope that this is just the beginning of your journey in apologetics. Some of you, I should say, I know this is not the beginning. This is the 7th, 8th, 12th time being a part of some sort of apologetics things here. And there's so much more to learn and grow here, right? It's almost like the more that we do this, the more we find out how much we don't know sometimes. And so that just means that we can continually grow. And I'm excited to have our speaker here today to do that. But I'm also really excited that our church has an apologetics ministry. There's not many churches that have anything like that. And I'm sure that's why some of you have come out from other churches to be here today. And I'm so grateful for that. Some of you joining online, I know we have people online from all over the country who are tuning in today for this, and will continue to tune in throughout the class because this is the beginning of this semester of classes, and it's going to be every Thursday, same time, 7 to 8 o'clock. It won't be in this room every week. We don't have the big room, I guess. But, if you keep coming like this, we may have to get the big room, okay? So I'm okay with that. I will reserve this room if you fill it up, okay? Deal? I'd love that because this would be a great thing. But typically, we're in the next building over on the second floor in what is called EC 23 and 24, right? Okay. Well, like I was saying before, if you haven't already opened up your little computer in your pocket and gone to this website, slido.com, you can enter in the code. It's just going to ask you for code 332233, and that will allow you to interact tonight. That's how we're going to ask questions. And tonight, we get a special treat. We're going to have the majority of our time in Q&A. All right, and you being able to ask questions, and really, Frank is very versed in all areas of apologetics, so you can ask just about any question you want. I'll see if that's true, of Frank in a minute. We'll actually ask him if that's okay. But I think what I know of Frank, this will be a great person to ask any question about. So anyway, without further ado, now that I've already mentioned his name, let me bring up Gary, our apologetics ministry leader here, and this is Gary Zacharias, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Josh. Welcome. This is our kickoff event. We're so pleased to have Frank with us tonight. Well, Josh already mentioned we're going to be meeting the next 10 weeks. Steve Brucker and I are going to be co-teaching classes here on campus. If some of you can make it here, it'd be fun to have you. If you want to do it online, you can't come for whatever reason, we are going to make it online. So if you go to efcc.org/apologetics, and then there's a button there and it says contact us, and we'll give you the information for being able to watch it online. So this is the first time we've been able to do that. We were either in person or online. Now we can do a combo, so we're looking forward to that. Oh, yeah, okay. So I'm glad Frank's up on the screen here now. So about, 6-8 years ago, we went through a DVD in this apologetics class, and we watched Frank debate Christopher Hitchens on the existence of God. He did such an excellent job. Christopher Hitchens he's a wonderful guy to listen to. He's got stylistic ideas, but he's pretty empty as far as his arguments went. So a few years after that, we went through Frank's book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And we were so impressed with his clear thinking, his dynamism as he presents his defense for the Christian faith. He's a passionate person. He speaks, he writes, appears on college campuses. He does Q&A all over the place. And we're really fortunate to have Frank here tonight. So thank you, Frank. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary. How many people, I can see some of the audience right now, how many people know of a young person who went off to college and left the faith shortly thereafter? The people watching online, you probably know of a young person that has left the faith. They were solid in youth group. They were solid growing up, but they go off to college and they walk away from the faith. Actually, you know what's happening now, ladies and gentlemen? They're actually walking away from the faith a lot earlier before they go to college, because they've got this glowing rectangle thing, And there's a lot of misinformation on this. There's a lot of good stuff on the phone as well, but there's a lot of misinformation. And they're mentally checking out of Christianity long before their parents or friends even know it. They're going through the motions because it's a social thing to go to youth group, but they really don't think Christianity is true. And they don't want to think it's true for a number of moral reasons. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. But one reason, in fact, the number one reason cited by people who were Christians but walked away is intellectual skepticism. They say there's evidence against the Christian faith, or I was never given evidence for it, and therefore I'm no longer a Christian. Well, I just want to give a brief overview of the argument we give when we go on a college campus, a high school, or a church. Very brief overview. In fact, it comes from our book, as Gary mentioned. The book's called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And we do this on college campuses. We do it in churches. We do it in youth groups. And we try and show them kind of an overall argument for the truth of Christianity. And it boils down to 4 questions. If you investigate these 4 questions and you investigate them and realize that the answer to these 4 questions is yes, then Christianity is true. What are the 4 questions? Does truth exist? Does God exist? Are miracles possible? And is the New Testament historically reliable enough to let us know that Jesus rose from the dead? Truth, God, miracles, New Testament, resurrection. If those 4 questions are answered in the affirmative because there's evidence for them, then Christianity's true. Let's just spend just a little bit of time, and then we'll spend the rest of our time on Q&A. Actually, Gary said we're going to do Q&A. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think we're going to do all Q, no A, okay? So that gives everybody a chance to ask a question, takes all the pressure off me. All right, no, we'll get to questions later. All right, first question, does truth exist? Why is that important? Because you hear people saying, well, there's no truth. You got your truth. I got my truth. All truth is relative, right? Well, if there's no truth, then obviously Christianity can't be true. But of course, if there's no truth, then atheism can't be true either. Nothing could be true. Now, just from a very practical standpoint, ladies and gentlemen, if there was no truth, would you ever go to school? Would you ever read a book? Would you ever watch a YouTube video for information? I mean, no, of course there's truth out there. And it's really easy to show that there's truth because the very act of denying there's truth is actually a truth claim. In other words, if somebody says there's no truth, you want to ask that person a question. What should the question be? Is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. Did I say that right? I know that can give you intellectual constipation if you think about it, but that's because it's self-defeating. To say there is no truth is like saying I can't speak a word in English, right? If I were to say I can't speak a word in English, what would you say? Say, hey, you're using English to say it. This is self-defeating. So anyone who denies truth is actually uttering a truth claim. And so the claim that there is no truth defeats itself. And there are many claims like this in our culture. It's like when people say all truth is relative. You're simply going to ask that person, is that a relative truth? No, that's an absolute truth, claiming all truth is relative. It defeats itself. Or in today's culture, people often say it this way. They'll say, there is no the truth. There's just my truth or your truth. Now, if you think about that long enough, you're going to realize that's self-defeating as well. Why? Because when somebody says there is no the truth, just my truth, you might want to ask them, is that a the truth or is it just your truth? If it's just your truth, if it's just your opinion, then why should I believe it? But if it's the truth, you just got done telling me there are no the truths. You see, this is a the truth claim, claiming there are no the truths. Now, I know it's unpopular in our culture to say this, but it's true. It's true. There is no such thing as my truth or your truth. There's just the truth. I mean, it sounds right to say, you've got your truth, I've got my truth, you live your truth, I'll live my truth, we'll all get along. It sounds right. It sounds so Oprah, right? It sounds like everyone should believe this. The problem is it's logically self-defeating. In fact, if someone were to say there is no the truth, there's just my truth or your truth, you might want to ask them, first of all, what do you mean by that? Secondly, how'd you come to that conclusion? But then you can say, to say that I just have my truth would be like saying, I just have my math. You know, I have my own math. I mean, imagine if Gary hired me to do something at his house. Imagine if he said, hey, Frank, come over to my house and work. You know, you got to cut the grass. You got to do some things around the house. And I'll give you $10 an hour. And when you're done, just tell me how many hours I'll pay you. Now, actually, Gary would never do this because he doesn't pay that much. But no, anyway, let's suppose he did that. And I worked for 15 hours. And I said to him, Gary, I'm done. I worked 15 hours, $10 an hour. You owe me $150,000. He's going to go, what? What are you, crazy? I don't owe you $150,000. I owe you $150. And I go, oh, no, you don't understand. I have my own math. He'd go, Frank, you're crazy. And I would be. There's not my math or your math. There's not my truth or your truth. There's just truth. So the people who are peddling the idea that all truth is relative, or are peddling the idea that postmodernism, that there is no truth, is really true, they're defeating themselves. Postmodernism and relativism are false because they claim it's true, there is no truth. So it's easy to show that there's truth out there. All you need to do is point out that anyone who claims there's no truth is actually uttering a truth claim. And we spent at least 2 chapters on that in the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. We show you some tactics on how to point out that truth does exist. But we got to move on to the next question because we have limited time here. The second question after does truth exist is, does God exist? Now, in the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, we give 3 arguments for the existence of God. The first argument is the argument from the beginning of the universe. This is known as the cosmological argument. It basically says, if the universe had a beginning, then it must have had a beginner. The second argument is also known as the design argument, sometimes called the teleological argument. And that just means if there's design in the universe and design in life, you, me, living things we see around us, then there must be a designer. Now, those 2 arguments have scientific evidence behind them. The third argument doesn't have any science behind it. It's more philosophical in nature. Yet it's the argument we've all known since we were very small children. And it's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. And it says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one, like it's wrong to torture babies for fun, or it's wrong to murder 6 million people in a Holocaust, then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no standard beyond humanity, then everything's just a matter of opinion. That's just your opinion against a baby torturer's opinion, or that's just your opinion against Hitler's opinion. Now, we know that torturing babies for fun or murdering people is not just a matter of opinion, that violates a standard that everyone should obey. What could account for that standard? Only a being like God, a being whose nature is goodness, righteousness, and justice. If God doesn't exist, nothing's ultimately right or wrong. If God does exist, he's the standard of rightness, and any deviation from that standard would be what we would call evil. So we all know that certain things are right and certain things are wrong. This is an argument for God. Now, we don't have time to dive into all those arguments. I'm just going to mention the first argument, the argument called the cosmological argument, which says that the universe had a beginning. Now, even atheists are admitting this, ladies and gentlemen. Even atheistic scientists are admitting it. Stephen Hawking, probably the most famous atheist of his time, he died about 5 years ago, put it this way. He said almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, Hawking tried to come up with another explanation other than God. He failed, but he's admitting the data. What's the data? That space, time, and matter literally came into existence out of nothing. Once there was nothing, no space, time, and matter, and then the entire universe exploded into being. Now, here's my question. What could have accounted for that? Could nature have created the universe? No. Why? Because nature didn't exist. Nature is the effect. It's not the cause. So there must be something beyond nature that created nature. And think about it this way. if space, matter, and time had a beginning, and even atheists are admitting this, then whatever created space, matter, and time can't be made of space, matter, and time. In other words, the cause must transcend space, matter, and time. The cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing, personal in order to choose to create. You say, why personal? To go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, someone had to make a choice, and only persons can make choices. Persons with minds. Someone that has the ability to make a choice has to have a mind. So in addition to the cause being personal, the cause must also be intelligent to have a mind to make a choice. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? You say, well, God. Yeah, you might say, well, Frank, how do you know it's the Christian God? And the answer is, we don't yet. We haven't done enough research yet. The cosmological argument doesn't get you all the way to the Christian God. I mean, this being that created the universe could be Allah at this point, or some other theistic God. We don't know if it's the Christian God yet, because we don't know about Jesus. But if we keep going through these questions, truth, God, miracles, New Testament, and we realize that Jesus rose from the dead, then we're going to be able to say, the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,989 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing. We don't know that now, just from this one argument, but we have attributes which could be the Christian God: spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, and intelligent. Okay, that's just from one argument. You add the teleological argument, the moral argument in, you're going to figure out, without opening the Bible, that we have a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent, moral creator who created all things and sustains all things to this very moment. We haven't opened the Bible yet, but we have a being that looks like it could be the God of the Bible. So, how do we know it's the God of the Bible and not Allah or some other theistic or deistic God? For that, we got to go to the third question: are miracles possible? And a lot of people don't believe in miracles. They think miracles are incredible. They've never seen a miracle, so they can't believe in one. Well, I always ask people, what's the greatest miracle in the Bible? And many people will say the resurrection. And the answer is actually, no, it's not the resurrection. The resurrection's easy compared to the greatest miracle. What is the greatest miracle in the Bible? The greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that verse is true, every other verse is at least possible. Well, ladies and gentlemen, even atheistic scientists are admitting the evidence for the first verse. They don't think it's God, but they're admitting there's a beginning. They're admitting that space, time, and matter literally had a beginning out of nothing. This is evidence for Genesis 1:1, which says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If Genesis 1:1 is true, every other miracle in the Bible is at least possible, right? I mean, it's possible that Noah and the ark is true if Genesis 1:1 is true. It's possible that Jonah and the whale is true if Genesis 1:1 is true, or Jonah and the great fish. I don't know. Is Jonah a whale of a tail or a tail of a whale? We don't know. Anyway, it's possible that Jesus rose from the dead if Genesis 1:1 is true. Because if God exists, then miracles are possible. Now, we talk a lot more about miracles and, can you believe something you haven't seen? I'll save that for the Q&A if you want to talk, questions about that, or why don't we see more miracles today? Well, we can talk about that during the Q&A. But I want to go now to question 4. We know that truth exists. We know that God exists. We know that miracles are possible. The fourth question is, how do we know the New Testament is telling the truth, particularly about the resurrection? Well, here's just one small piece of evidence among a lot. You need to realize that all the writers of the New Testament, with the exception of Luke, all the writers of the New Testament were Bible-believing, in other words, Old Testament-believing Jews. They thought they were God's chosen people. They had been God's chosen people for about 2,000 years. There were two things they didn't think could occur. They didn't think a man could claim to be God because that would be blasphemy, and they didn't think that someone would rise from the dead in the middle of time. They knew we'd all rise from the dead at the end of time, according to Daniel 12, but they didn't think someone would rise from the dead in the middle of time. And yet we have these Bible-believing Jews who thought they were God's chosen people, claiming that a man claimed to be God and rose from the dead, and then they go to their deaths for this. Now, why would they do this if it didn't happen? It went against their strongly held religious beliefs, and it didn't get them what people would lie to get. My friend Jay Warner Wallace, the cold case homicide detective, has been on Dateline more times than any other detective because he solved murders that are decades old. And Jim says this whenever he finds a dead body. He says, whenever I find a dead body, he says, there's only 3 reasons why that guy's dead. He goes, I don't need to chase down 1,000 motives. I just need to figure out which one of the 3 or a combination of these 3 motivations was behind this death. And he says, that guy is dead because there was either a sex issue, a money issue, or a power issue. Sex, money, or power. Those are the 3 things that people will murder for. In fact, they're the 3 things any of us sin for, right? Sex, money, and power are good things. The problem is they're so good, we'll sometimes take shortcuts to get them. And so Jim says, look, if you want to say the New Testament writers invented this, then what you need to do is you need to find one or more of those 3 motivators to see if they had the motivation to invent this. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this. Did the New Testament writers get real popular with the ladies for saying Jesus had resurrected from the dead? No, they didn't get sex. Did they get money for saying Jesus had resurrected from the dead? No, they weren't 21st century prosperity gospel preachers. No. Did they get power? No, they got the opposite of power. They got persecuted. Paul had power when he was against the church. As soon as he becomes a Christian, he's the one persecuted. He was persecuting the church when he was an unbeliever. As soon as he becomes a believer, he's persecuted. They didn't get sex. They didn't get money. They didn't get power. There's no motive to make this up. Then they go and die for it. Why would they do this? They wouldn't. You say, well, are you going to say that martyrdom proves Christianity? If you're going to say that, don't you have to say martyrdom proves Islam? No, you don't have to say martyrdom proves Islam. Why? Because there's a lot of differences between the Muslim martyrs of today and the New Testament martyrs of New Testament times. The Muslim martyrs of today don't have evidence that Islam is true. In other words, they haven't witnessed anything themselves that makes them say, oh yeah, Islam's true. The New Testament writers, on the other hand, witnessed Jesus rise from the dead. They saw Jesus, they touched Jesus, they ate with Jesus. They verified with their own senses that Jesus had risen from the dead. Look, some people will die for a lie they think is the truth. Nobody will die for a lie they know is a lie. And the New Testament writers were in a position to know whether it was a lie or not, and they went to their deaths anyway. You can't get better evidence than that unless you were there yourself. In fact, let me say one other thing about this, and then we'll go to your questions. In fact, what I'm going to say for some of you might sound like heresy. If you believe the Bible's inerrant like I do, it might sound like heresy for just a minute, but it's not. Just stick with me. Christianity is not true because a series of documents we call the Bible that we've put under one binding says it's true. In fact, Christianity would be true if the Bible never existed. You go, well, how can that be? Because Christianity did not originate with a book. Christianity originated with an event, the resurrection. Do you realize there were thousands of Christians before a line of the New Testament was ever written? Of course. You say, Frank, how could you be a Christian without the book of Romans? Look, was Paul a Christian before he wrote the book of Romans? Yeah, he was. Why? Because he witnessed the resurrected Jesus. Was John a Christian before he wrote the Gospel of John? Of course he was. Why? Because he witnessed the resurrected Jesus. Was Luke a Christian before he wrote the Gospel of Luke? Yeah, why? Because he interviewed eyewitnesses who had seen the resurrected Jesus. In other words, these people did not create the resurrection. The New Testament writers did not create the resurrection. The resurrection created the New Testament writers. You wouldn't have documents written by Jews in the first century claiming a man claimed to be God and rose from the dead, unless a man claimed to be God and rose from the dead. Now, thankfully, they wrote it down, which allowed us to know about it and orient our lives according to it. But it would have been true even if they had never written it down, because Christianity started with an event, not a book. And when the New Testament writers and the apostles and the disciples after that were trying to get people to become Christians, they didn't go to them and say, you have to believe the entire Old Testament is the word of God. No, they said, Jesus rose from the dead. Here's the evidence. Now, once Jesus has risen from the dead, and you know he's risen from the dead, then what you say is, well, if Jesus predicted and accomplished his own resurrection from the dead, then he's God. And we know that whatever God teaches is true. And we have reliable enough documents to know that not only did Jesus resurrect from the dead, he promised the Old Testament, or I should say he affirmed the Old Testament as the word of God, and he promised the New Testament. So it's on Jesus's authority that we believe the entire Bible is the word of God, because Jesus rose from the dead. And if he's predicted and accomplished his resurrection from the dead, then we ought to trust what he says. You say, why? Because look, I just have a personal policy. If somebody predicts and accomplishes his own resurrection from the dead, I just trust whatever the guy says. Okay. So look, there's a lot more evidence than I can talk about here. You know, I've gone for 20 minutes or so, but the bottom line is truth exists. God exists. Miracles are possible. And Jesus rose from the dead, which means on his authority, the entire Bible is true. Now, if you really want to dive into this, get this book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, or sign up for our online course, which starts September 27th. I'll be your instructor. If you go to crossexamined.org, crossexamined with a D on the end of it.org, and click on online courses, you'll see it there. We also have a version for 6th to 8th graders. And anybody after 8th grade can take the course I'm teaching. Also, there's a brand new book my son and I just wrote. If you want a fun way of getting biblical life lessons and apologetics, get the new book, Hollywood Heroes, How Your Favorite Movies Reveal God. We go through some of the top blockbuster movies of the past few decades and point out that they're all borrowing from the greatest story ever told. And the ultimate hero is actually Jesus. Even all these superhero movies you hear, you know, Iron Man, Captain America, Batman, Superman, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, they all, Wonder Woman, they all have themes that are stolen from the greatest story ever told. All right. Now, I've spoken long enough. Let's go to the Q&A. So Josh, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much. There's about 40 or 45 of us in here. What do you guys think so far? Okay.
Oh, how about this? Can you hear that?
You know, whoa! I'm hearing the applause come through, but
right there, it's just like magic. I'm telling you.
That's right. I love it. You know, I'm so glad you brought up that book. In fact, our first question is about your latest book, but I just want to remind people, both at home and here in the room, that back at Slido.com, you can upvote questions. Okay, in other words, you can vote to say, this is the question I want to hear next. And my commitment to you is, as long as it's not a bad question, because I believe there are bad questions. I'm just kidding. We're going to stick with the best question available. And we tell kids that there's no bad questions, but you are not kids, are you? Just kidding. All right, fine. All right. So here's the first question, Frank. And it comes about that book. I read Hollywood Heroes, okay, and loved it. And I'm glad you gave a brief description of it. But the question is, how well has it been received by non-believers? Have people in Hollywood read this, seen it? What are your thoughts?
Well, if they haven't told me about it. We have several reviews on Amazon that are very good reviews. And if anyone likes the book, we appreciate any review you can give us on Amazon. If you don't like the book, you didn't hear me say this, okay? No, it's getting good reviews. It's a fun book, and it's a fun way to get people to think about the biggest questions of life, and also to give them good biblical life lessons, and to point out that what they're really yearning for when they watch a movie is to be taken from this place of pain, evil, and suffering to a place of bliss. And that's exactly what Christianity promises, that Jesus is going to take us from this place of pain and suffering to a place of bliss. And that should resonate with everybody, regardless of what your religious beliefs are right now.
There you go. I like that. I like that a lot. By the way, I forgot to do this earlier. There are, like I said, a bunch of people on YouTube right now that are watching us, and I just want to point out, Judy Steidel at home is saying that there's a peacemakers class, and they're joining. So, our screen says there's 37 people that are watching, but I'm not sure how many people she has. So I'm so glad you're watching. We've got someone here from Raymond is from Arizona joining in. I've asked where people are coming from. We've got someone here from La Mesa, which is down south of us, Frank. Someone right down San Marcos, right up the street here in Escondido, people at home. And so I'm glad to have so many people watching and joining us here. But our next question that is currently getting voted as the next question. Okay, here it is. What do you think the biggest problem facing Christianity? What is the biggest problem facing Christianity these days?
Wow, that's a big question.
That's not small, is it?
Yeah, I would probably say, you mean it depends on where you are in the world, I guess, right?
That's a great point.
If you're in China, it's different than it is here in America. Great. But I would say probably here in America, I know this is going to sound funny and maybe not true. Our biggest obstacle is prosperity. Because when things go really well, just as Jesus said, we tend to get secure in our own lives, and we just only call God when we really think we need him. And Jesus said it's difficult for a rich man to get into heaven. Thankfully, he didn't say it was impossible, because if that were the case, most of America wouldn't be able to get in. The reason I think he said that is because we all know how riches can make us complacent and get us too attached to this world and not really follow Jesus. Not really follow him because we're afraid we might lose some of our comforts. And in fact, I did a podcast. It's going to come out in a week or so with my friend Eric Metaxas, who has a new book out called Letter to the American Church. And he was just pointing out how many people are cowardly when it comes to standing for the truth in this culture. And my question that I started the podcast with was this. If you lived in the South in 1860, would you be against slavery? And I know many, oh, sure I would be. No, you wouldn't. You probably wouldn't. Or if you lived in Nazi Germany in 1940, would you be against the Nazis? Metaxas's point, and he did a great biography on Bonhoeffer, was that most of the pastors weren't even against the Nazis because they were too worried about the consequences of standing for truth. I mean, we got people today that won't even stand up to Twitter or Facebook, and you're going to stand up to the Nazis? You're going to stand up to the slave owners? No, you're not, because you're too comfortable. And we're all too comfortable.
Wow.
And that's one of our biggest problems. We think the meaning of life is to get the next iPhone upgrade. You know, it's coming out here in a couple of weeks. We better order that thing. That's going to make us happy. That's going to complete us. Really?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of our biggest problems. And you see this, by the way, in the book of Judges, right? You know that cycle in the book of Judges? Whenever the society got prosperous, they forgot about God. They sinned. They went into judgment. They repented. They came back to God. They started to prosper again. They sinned. They went into judgment. The cycle just kept going. And we need to realize that our God is our God, whether times are good or times are bad, and we need to keep our focus on him, not the focus on our creature comforts. And look, I want to be comfortable just like the rest of us, but we have to stand for truth because we're here to build an eternal kingdom. We're not here to just build our little kingdom here. I mean, you know, the little kingdom that we're all building here is going to be gone as soon as we die. And what's the point? You know, it's remember what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes. I slave I do all I can. I work and work and work, and then I leave it to somebody else, and then he's going to die too. What's the point? It's meaningless. It's vanity. Forget it. There's no meaning to life unless God exists.
Wow, that is a powerful answer, Frank. And I mean, I was kind of hoping you were going to say something like the atheists or something, far off away, but you said something that's personal to all of us. And I love how you started with around the world, that we have our own perspective. We think we are persecuted sometimes, and there are places around the world that's so much worse. What a powerful answer. I really, really appreciate your perspective there. Hey, they're upvoting questions, and they're not always in order, I just have to say. So this doesn't definitely go right after that. But here's a question that you kind of referenced something in this. But the question has to do with the idea of a multiverse, all right? So we're going now into science and maybe even science fiction. But anyway, what do you think about the claim that we are part of a multiverse and the Big Bang was just our universe being spawned by a pre-existing multiverse?
Okay, well, first of all, if that were true, there's no way to detect it because there's no way to get at these other universes if they exist. It's a complete faith position. Secondly, there would have to be some kind of universe generator that was creating this universe, which would seem to imply the existence of some kind of creator, right? So you don't seem to get rid of the existence of a creator. So there's no evidence for it, number one. Number two, you'd have to have this universe generator to do it. Number three, nobody would be saying this if the universe wasn't so fine-tuned. Let me give you an example of the kind of fine-tuning we're talking about here, Josh. The gravitational force is fine-tuned in its relationship to the strong nuclear force at 1 to the 10 to the 40th power. You say, what's 1 and 10 to the 40th power? That's 1 part in 1 with 40 zeros following it. You say, Frank, I can't get my head around that number. I know, neither can I. Let me give you an illustration. Take the entire North American continent from El Salvador all the way up through Canada. Stack the entire North American continent in dimes all the way to the moon. That's 238,000 miles. And then do that on a billion other North American continents. And then mark 1 dime red in all those billions of piles, all those billion piles, and mix it in, and then randomly throw a blindfolded friend into that big pile. The chances that he would randomly pick the 1 red dime is 1 chance in 10 to the 40th power. So look, either that number, that 1 in 10 to the 40th power, is designed or it wasn't designed. Either somebody meant that to be there or they didn't. What makes more sense? There's a mind out there that fine-tuned that ratio of the gravitational force to the strong nuclear force. By the way, that's just one parameter of at least a dozen about our universe that if you were to change any one of them, we wouldn't be here. And the reason that atheists are coming up with this multiverse theory is to avoid the obvious conclusion that this universe is designed. So they're just pulling this out of thin air to try and avoid this. And it doesn't work because even if there are other universes out there, the whole show, all of them together would still need a beginning. And all the little universes that have arisen would need some kind of creator as well. So you don't get rid of the need for a creator. You appear to be multiplying a need for a creator. And by the way, it's not me that has actually said that you'd still have an absolute beginning. The guy who said that is a believer in the multiverse. His name is Alexander Valenkin. He's a Russian cosmologist and agnostic who teaches at Tufts University. And even he admits that, look, even if the multiverse is true, you don't get rid of the need for an absolute beginning. So if you don't get rid of the need for an absolute beginning, you don't get rid of the need for an absolute beginner either. You say, well, wait a minute, Frank, who made God then? Well, you don't ask who created the uncreated creator, right? Yeah. It's like asking a bachelor, what's your wife's name? He doesn't have a wife. He's a bachelor, right? The uncreated creator doesn't have a creator. Now, how do we know he doesn't have a creator? Well, think about it this way. If space, matter, and time had a beginning, then as I said earlier, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, timeless. If you're timeless, do you have a beginning? No, which means you don't have a cause. The being that created space, matter, and time is the uncaused first cause. There has to be an uncaused first cause. It's either the universe or something outside the universe. All the evidence shows the universe had a beginning. So the multiverse hypothesis, even agnostic astronomer Paul Davies, he wrote a book on fine-tuning. He said the multiverse is a dodge. You're trying to avoid the obvious. And he's not even a Christian. He's saying it's a dodge. It doesn't work.
There you go. Fascinating, fascinating. I absolutely love that. Oh man, I wish I could be asking the questions right now. Because this has so many implications about things we're hearing today. Okay, Webb Space Telescope looking for other life on planets. Can I just ask this, Frank? What do you think the odds of us finding life on other planets are?
You mean intelligent life on other planets?
There you go. Yes.
I'm not sure there's intelligent life on this planet. What do you think? Actually, and again, this is not me speaking. These are atheists. Now, think about this for a second, ladies and gentlemen. The number of stars in the universe are about equivalent to the number of grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth times 100,000. That's the estimate. The number of stars are equivalent to sand grains on 100,000 Earths. And by the way, to go from one star to another star in our galaxy, if you could go at space shuttle speed, which is 5 miles a second, would take you over 200,000 years. So in other words, to go from our star, the sun, to another star an average distance away inside our galaxy, going 5 miles a second, will take you over 200,000 years. The heavens are what we call awesome. Don't ever use the word awesome unless you're talking about God or the heavens. Don't say awesome shot, dude, awesome shirt, dude, awesome TikTok video. No. Only use the word awesome for God or the heavens, because that's really what's awesome. Yet, despite all that, even atheistic scientists are saying it's unlikely there is intelligent life anywhere else in the universe, because the parameters, the kind of life we know about, carbon-based life, the parameters you would need to have carbon-based life anywhere else in the universe are still so remote, despite stars equivalent to sand grains on 100,000 Earths. They're still saying that's unlikely. So, but even if there is life out, it's not going to change Christianity. Okay. Okay. Maybe there is. Big deal.
There you go. All right. Oh man, I love this stuff. Thank you so much for that. Okay, now, once again, our people here are asking all the questions, and I did this. I said you can ask any question, and I'm so glad, because I think Frank has some great answers here. But this question is going back to Genesis here. Really, the question has to do with God. Why doesn't God just take care of the evil people, right? Why doesn't he destroy the wicked today, like he did in Genesis 7, okay, the flood, or even like Genesis 19, maybe a more localized destruction like Sodom and Gomorrah? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, a good question. In fact, I got that question at Michigan State a number of years ago. I was up at Michigan State doing the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist presentation. And I knew there was a militant atheist in the audience, because he sat through the entire 2-hour presentation looking like this. I mean, he didn't crack a smile once, and I had some pretty good jokes in there. Anyway, when it was time for Q&A, his hand shot up immediately, and I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "If there is a good God, why doesn't he stop all the evil in the world?" And I said, "Sir, that is an excellent question. Maybe because if he did, he might start with you and me, because we do evil every day." You ever notice when we start complaining about evil, we always start complaining about other people? We're always saying, "Hey, God, why don't you stop him?" Or, "God, why don't you stop her?" We never say, "God, why don't you stop me?" In fact, let me ask you guys a question. If God were to stop evil at midnight tonight, would you still be alive at 1201?
Dang.
I wouldn't be.
Nope.
Because we do evil every day. You say, well, I'm not as evil as so-and-so. Well, maybe you're not as evil as so-and-so, but you're still, all it means is you're less evil. Okay? You're not the standard of perfection like Jesus is. So, yeah, you might look good comparing yourself to other bad people, but you're not looking good to the standard of perfection. None of us are. That's why we need a savior. You know, you can get to heaven by being good. You can do it. You just got to be perfect your whole life. Too late for me. How about you?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason why God doesn't stop evil right now is because he's waiting for the full number of the Gentiles to come in. Now, once they come in, God is not going to stop evil by taking away our free will. You see, he has to give us free will. Why? So we can love. The problem is when he gives us free will, we can also do evil. But he's not going to take away our free will. What is God ultimately going to do about evil? He's going to quarantine it in a place called hell, where people who don't want to follow him, who don't want his free gift of salvation, will be quarantined so they cannot harm anyone else. So heaven will be a place where those people who have accepted the free gift go, and the people that have sinned and not accepted the free gift will be quarantined in a place called hell. So God doesn't stop all the evil in the world right now, because if he did, this wouldn't be a moral universe. We couldn't love. We couldn't actually make any progress. But one day he will by quarantining it.
There you go. Oh, Frank, I love the way you answered that, by the way. Okay, not only did you end up giving us a solid reason, but you actually turned it around on us. You know, I think you did that also with the prosperity answer. It's an issue with all of us, and that's such a it's a great way to interact with people, and that's the kind of answer that I love. So thank you. Okay, next question. God has created truth and has also permitted mysteries. How can we help people to avoid the binary thinking trap, thinking that there shouldn't be any mysteries?
Well, I think it's quite obvious there should be mysteries, because we're finite beings and God is infinite. So even when we get to heaven, we're not going to become God. We're not just going to know everything, right? Okay. So there are mysteries, and for some from a practical perspective, we know why there are mysteries, because there's a lot to know, and we have a limited capacity to know. But another reason is if we did know everything and could know everything, that might change our behavior for the negative, right? For example, if you knew when you were going to die, might that change the way you live now? Yeah, maybe for the negative. If you knew you had another 40 years, you might go, I'll live it up until maybe 39 and a half, right? Yeah. There are mysteries out there. The secret things are of the Lord, the scriptures say. But we understand why there are mysteries. God is infinite. He can see the end from the beginning. He's outside of time. But we're finite. We're inside of time. And if we could see the future with clarity on every issue, that might change our behavior in a negative way. And it might cause us not to even trust God. Well, I know what's going to happen, so why do I need God, right? So I think mysteries are there for a reason. In fact, Paul talks about a mystery that was withheld from the forces of the world, the worldly forces, Satan and his minions. What's the mystery that was withheld? That Jesus would be the Messiah, and the way he'd be the Messiah would be go to the cross, die, and rise again. In fact, he says this in 1 Corinthians 2. He says, these things were veiled. This mystery was kept secret. So the powers and principalities of this world, if they had known of them, they never would have crucified the Lord of glory. So when you look at the Old Testament prophecies, say maybe in the Old Testament, you might go, this is interesting. It's pointing somewhere, but I can't quite figure it all out. But once you see that Jesus has come, then you go, oh, now I see how Micah 5:2 fits in. Now I see how Daniel 9. Now I see how Isaiah 53. Now I see how all these Old Testament prophecies are fulfilled in Jesus. You don't see it looking forward. If you did, then it might affect your behavior and might affect the behavior of Satan and his demons and the other worldly powers. But you can't see it looking back. You know, the New Testament is the box top to the prophetic puzzle of the Old Testament. You ever try and put together a puzzle without the box top? It's really hard to do. You got all these pieces. You're going, I don't know where this goes. But as soon as you get the box top, you go, oh, I think I know where this piece goes, right? The New Testament provides the box top to the Old Testament prophecies. They're designed in the Old Testament, but you don't know how they're designed until you get the box top. And then you go, got it. I see how these pieces go together.
Nice. I like it. I like it. Okay. All right. Everybody at home in the room, you're giving me a lot of ties here in the questions. Okay. So I need you to vote some more because we have maybe time for a couple more. But okay, here's the top vote. You get it right here. Okay. These are the questions that the people want to hear. If you only had time for one argument, okay, one argument, okay. I don't know if it's the elevator argument or what that is, but what is the best argument for the existence of God?
Today, for most people, it's probably the moral argument, because you can ignore the beginning, you can ignore design. It's really hard to ignore morality. Why? Because you deal with it every day. And everybody, whether they're an atheist, Christian, or anywhere in between, thinks certain things are right and certain things are wrong. In fact, many people out there who are atheists think they have rights. They're inventing rights every 10 minutes, right? Our country thinks that there's new rights appearing all the time. Where do rights come from? They don't come from government. They come from government. You don't have rights. You just have preferences. Rights come from God. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights by who? By their creator, not by their government. You see, if there is no God, then you can't say you have any rights. Only if God exists and you're made in his image do you have certain rights. If God doesn't exist, there are no rights. It's just one person's opinion against another, and he who has the most power can impose whatever he wants on anybody else. There's only two ways to govern. You can govern by principle, by truth, or you can govern by power. Notice there are many people in our culture today that don't want to argue principle. They want to cancel you by using power, because they can't argue on principle. They can't argue on truth. They can only demagogue and try and cancel you, try and shut you up. That's using power. So I think the strongest or the most relevant argument today is the argument from morality, because everybody thinks certain things are right and wrong. And as soon as you ask them, if there's no God, why is that right? Why is that wrong? Who said? You said? You're now God?
That's really good. Oh, and that's what our world needs. It's like they're searching for a moral compass, and it seems like that what you're saying seems so self-evident, because you see it on all sides. Everybody trying to use power in different ways. So I really appreciate that a lot. Okay. Oh wow, we just had a one question jump up to the top. By the way, I was going to give you a real simple one to end, because it was, did God create evil? Just kidding. That was actually up there, but I got to go where the people vote here. So I told you I would. If this question they say is out of bounds for tonight, then disregard it. Okay, I've already read this question, and oh man, I want to know where you go with this. How do you handle the pronoun issues today? And specifically, they're talking about a classroom teacher. This is a tough one. This is a tricky one. But how do you recommend, as I'm going to say a public school classroom teacher, any recommendations?
I might ask some questions. I might ask them, do you think it's ever right to try and force somebody to violate their conscience? See what they say. If they're probably not going to say yes. They're probably going to say no, that wouldn't be right. And I might say, I'm always going to treat everybody with respect, because everyone's made in the image of God according to my worldview and according to what I believe. So I'm going to treat everyone with respect, but my conscience will not allow me to lie to people. I'm not going to lie to you. I will call you by whatever name you want me to call you, but I'm not going to affirm that you're a man when you're really a woman, because that would be lying to you and it wouldn't be right to you. It would, even if you want me to, there are certain things that I won't do out of respect for who you really are. Because in today's culture, people think love means approval. Love does not mean approval. Every parent knows this. How many parents do we have in the audience right now?
I'm seeing a lot.
Right.
Most of them are, yes.
All right. How many former children do we have? Okay, good. That's everybody, right? Okay. Question. If your parent approves of everything you want to do as a child, is that parent loving? No. Parents have to stand in the way of evil. And that means sometimes saying no to something a kid wants to do. Well, the same thing is true with other people. If you truly want to love someone, you don't approve of everything they want to do. You say, I love you so much that I'm going to stand in the way of even things you want to do because it's not what's best for you. Love means seeking what's best for the other person. And you don't seek what's best for the other person by affirming them to going down a road that we know is going to be damaging to them. In fact, I don't know how much you know about this issue because it's unfortunately many churches don't talk about it. And we need to talk about it because people want answers. In fact, I was at a conference out in California, not far from you in San Diego, my friend Charlie Kirk, TPUSA conference, pastors conference. And a pastor got up there and he said, my congregation wants to know that they're not insane. They want to know that, is it really true there's only two genders? Is it really true that men were made for women and women were made for men and marriage is between a man and a woman? Is it really true that an unborn child is a human being in the womb? You know, is it really true that that you're not going to help people by going to socialism, that socialism is going to actually hurt the poor the most? Is that all really true? We want to know that. Tell us. Right? And yet many people aren't talking about it. Here's the truth about transgenderism. First of all, transgenderism presupposes fixed genders. Because if I'm a man and I think I'm a woman, I have to have some idea what a man is and some idea what a woman is to know that there's a difference, right? I also have to have some idea what a man is and some idea what a woman is in order to make the so-called transition. And there are people that legitimately have what's called gender dysphoria. Here's the problem, though. If we affirm them in that, then what we are doing is we're sending them down a road that has been documented to be a road where the suicide rate is 19 times higher than the general public. In other words, people that have the so-called surgery are 19 times more likely to commit suicide after the surgery than the general public. There's a brief honeymoon period, but 10 years down the road, these people have a 19 times higher rate of suicide. How are we helping people by affirming them to go down that road? We're not. This is why Dr. Paul McHugh at Johns Hopkins University likens gender dysphoria to anorexia. For example, if someone has anorexia, they have a mismatch between their mind and their body. Now, how do we treat anorexics? We don't affirm them in that mismatch. We don't say, you know, you are heavy, we have to give you liposuction. We say, no, your mind is not telling you the truth. We need to give you we need to give you nutrition. We need to change your mind, in other words. Yet when it comes to gender dysphoria, we do the opposite. We say, we don't need to change your mind. We need to change your body. When in reality, you can't change your gender. You can't change your sex. It's in every one of your 100 trillion cells. It's impossible to do. If you truly want to help people, you need to get them psychiatry, not surgery. Because that's what's going to be best for them long term. That's what all the data show, regardless of whether you're a Christian or not. That's just what we see in the data. And yet people want to deny that. And I'm not going to be one who's going to deny that out of love for other people and out of my own conscience. I'm not going to affirm what they want me to affirm them in because I'm not telling them the truth, which means I'm not loving them the right way. Now, they may hate me for that, but that's on them. That's not on me. We're supposed to do what's right and leave the results to God.
That's I love how, I mean, you, even in the beginning of the answer, you ended up putting it on, something about a virtue in me, in us, that I want to tell the truth, right? And I know teachers who, it's a lot harder to just say the names every time. So it's a bit more work, but that's what they do. And it's a strange world that we live in now. Well,
there was a young man, Josh, at the University of Michigan who, when he was asked what his pronoun was, he said, "My pronoun is Your Majesty." So, he got around it that way. Just call me Your Majesty. That's fine.
Yeah. The Reverend will be fine. Just kidding. No.
Yeah.
That's oh, Frank. Well, this has been so fun. We have about 20 more questions that we're going to get in 1 minute. No, I'm just kidding. No, we've had such a blast with you. I really, really appreciate you giving us your time. I appreciate the books that you've written, the way that you've invested in the church. The Church Universal. Not just our church, but I know we've used your materials. We have benefited from them, and we pray that that your ministry would be blessed, that you would continue on. In fact, I want to ask you if you have any last words to say to us, and then if you'd allow me, I'd like to just pray for you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Josh. Let me give some more resources in addition to the online course that we're about to start here in a few weeks at crossexamine.org. I want to send everybody the complete "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist" PowerPoint presentation and about 4 other presentations in a PDF format for free. All you need to do, I'm going to give you the number, okay? Just text the word evidence to 855-909-0582. 855-909-0582. So if you text the word evidence to 855-909-0582, I'm going to send you the entire "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist" PowerPoint presentation in a PDF format and 4 or 5 other presentations as well. By the way, the "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist" PowerPoint presentation, all the slides together, there's over 300 of them. Okay. And you can read them at your leisure. And I mean, I probably told you about 7 slides worth of information tonight when we went through the 4 questions. But it's much more robust than that. So if you really want to get into it, just text that word evidence to that number you see at the bottom of the screen, and we'll send it to you for free.
That's great. Oh, I really appreciate it. All right. Well, Frank, as we close our time together, I think it's only appropriate that we lift you up because you're in a place where God is using you, but that means that the enemy doesn't want you to succeed. And so we just want to pray a blessing over you, and we'll say our thanks and goodbye. All right. Let's
all right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Lord God, we do thank you so much. Thank you for Frank and his ministry, the years that he has dedicated to loving you with his mind, by loving people with his mind and with his heart, and with the tactics that he uses. It's out of love for the lost, love for the people that are yours that just don't know it yet. That's why he does what he does. That's why he trains. That's why he thinks well about these things, to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And I'm so thankful that he's doing that. And so, God, we ask and we pray a blessing on him. Would you use him in mighty ways? Would you give him influence in these school campuses? We just pray that the groups that bring him would have influence, so that they can get him on campuses, that he can present this material. We ask that you would open up the ears of people to hear the words that you have to say. Would they hear the gospel? Would they please come to know you? We pray. And so we just ask that you would protect Frank and all he does. And I pray that you would use him for your glory for many, many years. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Josh. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, everyone there. Hope to see you at another time. God bless.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody at home. Thank you, everybody at home. And thank you all for joining us. It has been a real privilege. And don't forget that next week at the same time, 7 p.m., upstairs EC20, or please join the Facebook page. Okay, if you're joining us on YouTube, you found us. I'm so glad. But on Facebook, if you type in EFCC Apologetics, is that going to find the Facebook group, Gary. Okay, EFCC, Emmanuel Faith Community Church Apologetics on Facebook. You can join the group. Okay, it's a private group, but if you're watching tonight, I'm pretty sure they're going to let you in. But that's where all of these series are going to be streamed over the next few weeks. If you can't make it out on a Thursday night, you can join in and watch. They'll be saved on Facebook, and we would love to see you there. So, everybody, thank you so much. And we have an announcement, Gary. Okay, they're actually asking for a sign up. If they're just saying there's still time to sign up for more information, you can go to efcc.org/apologetics, and you can get Gary's email there, and you can ask him about more information, and you can sign up there if you're at home. All right, God bless everybody. Take care.